What if I told you that hidden inside ordinary pocket change lies a series of coins so rare and so powerful in their story that they can rewrite the way you see American history itself? What if a single penny could carry the weight of a nation's struggle, its pride, its artistry, and its secrets? And what if, among billions of common copper cents, there existed only a handful so unique that collectors have hunted them for generations? Today, in Us Numis Journal, we unlock the mystery of 10 rare wheat pennies, coins that were never meant to survive, coins born from controversy, accident, and design brilliance, each one holding a secret chapter of the American story. These are not just pennies. They are witnesses to history and symbols of value, far beyond their tiny size. And tonight, we trace their journey from the minting presses of the early 20th century to the glass cases of modern collectors, where they command prices that can reach into the hundreds of thousands. This is not just numismatics. This is the untold saga of America, stamped in copper. In the vast history of American coinage, there are certain coins that stand as more than just pieces of metal. They become storytellers of an era, witnesses of a nation's struggles and triumphs, and symbols of an economy reshaping itself after years of hardship. One such coin is the 1946 wheat penny, a small copper cent that may look ordinary in the palm of the hand, but behind its design, its production, and its circulation lies a deep history that connects to the end of World War II, the dawn of a new American century, and the shifting balance of global power. When you pick up a 1946 wheat penny, you are not just holding a coin. You are holding the first post-war cent, the first penny struck in an America no longer under the shadow of wartime production, the first copper coin issued after years of wartime zinc-coated steel cents and copper rationing. And with that comes a tale that numismatists, historians, and collectors have studied for decades. This is a story of how one coin embodies the rebirth of a nation's minting system, and how even the smallest denomination reflects the heartbeat of its people. The year 1946 was unlike any that had come before. The world was still reeling from the devastation of World War II. Millions of soldiers had returned home. Factories once devoted to weapons and tanks were now refitted for automobiles and consumer goods, and the United States Mint found itself facing a new era of coinage production. During the war, the demand for copper had been so high that the government diverted almost all copper resources to ammunition, shell casings, and other military necessities. That is why in 1943, the Mint produced pennies out of steel coated with zinc, a change that shocked Americans and caused endless confusion in circulation. By 1944 and 1945, the Mint returned to using a copper alloy made partly from recycled wartime shell casings. But when 1946 arrived, the Mint officially shifted back to its regular pre-war composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. The return to true copper marked a symbolic step back into normal life in America, and the 1946 wheat penny became a marker of this transition. The design of the coin continued to honor Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, with the wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent on the reverse, a design that had been in use since 1909, when the centennial of Lincoln's birth was celebrated. This familiar image reassured the American public that while the world had changed, their coinage still carried a continuity of national identity. Yet within that familiar design, the 1946 issue carried its own significance for collectors. It represented the first year of true post-war copper pennies, and with nearly 1 billion pieces struck across the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, it became a coin of abundance in everyday life. For the average American, the coin jingling in their pocket might have helped buy a loaf of bread or a cup of coffee, but for today's collector, that same penny might hold a story worth far more than its face value. At Philadelphia Mint produced over 950 million of these coins without a mint mark, while the Denver Mint added another 215 million marked with a small d beneath the date, and the San Francisco Mint contributed 198 million bearing the S Mint mark. In total, more than 1.3 billion wheat pennies dated 1946 entered circulation. making it one of the most heavily minted years of the wheat penny era. Yet, despite this massive production, the survival of high-grade examples, especially those with sharp strikes and lustrous original red color, is far less common than raw numbers might suggest, and this scarcity in pristine condition is what drives the coin's collectible value. Today, numismatists often study the 1946 wheat penny not only for its mintage figures, but also for its varieties and errors that make it more desirable. Certain double-die obverses and repunched mint marks are known to exist, and these varieties transform an ordinary cent into a rare treasure sought by specialists. For example, a 1946D wheat penny with a strong repunched mint mark can fetch multiples of its standard value at auction, and collectors have spent decades cataloging these minor variations, each error a reminder that even in times of mass production, small imperfections slip through and create unexpected rarity. Beyond the coin's technical aspects lies its cultural significance. The 1946 wheat penny circulated during the booming post-war economy when American families were moving into new homes in the suburbs, when automobiles rolled off assembly lines at record pace, when GIs returned to college through the GI Bill, and when a young generation looked toward prosperity rather than sacrifice. Every cent that passed from hand to hand in those years carried with it the energy of a society rebuilding itself and striving toward progress. For children in the 1940s and 1952, the wheat penny was often the first coin they saved in jars or piggy banks, and many collectors today recall their earliest fascination with coins, beginning with wheat cents found in Changetto. Truly appreciate the 1946 wheat penny is to view it not as an isolated artifact, but as a chapter in the broader story of American money. The wheat penny series itself spanned from 1909 to 1958, covering both world wars, the Great Depression, and the rise of the United States as a superpower. By the time the last wheat penny was struck, the coin had already become a symbol of an America that had endured hardship and emerged stronger. Within that narrative, the 1946 issue stands as a bridge coin linking the years of war to the years of post-war growth. Collectors value the coin today not only for its history, but also for its potential as an affordable entry point into numismatics. While circulated examples remain common and inexpensive, higher-grade uncirculated specimens graded Ms. 65 or better, especially with original red luster, can command strong premiums at auction. Some coins in pristine condition have sold for hundreds and even thousands of dollars, showing that even a 1-cent coin can carry surprising financial value when preserved with care. When we examine the legacy of the 1946 wheat penny, we discover that it represents more than currency. It represents resilience. It represents the spirit of a nation emerging from war. It represents the beauty of numismatics, where even the smallest coin can open a window into history. And for a collector holding one today, there is a sense of connection not only to the millions of Americans who once spent it, but also to the great story of America itself. And that is why the 1946 wheat penny continues to fascinate historians, collectors, and storytellers. A lichithus is not just a copper cent. It is a living artifact of 1946, a year of hope, transition, and rebirth. And as we dive deeper into its history, its production, its varieties, and its value, we find enough richness in this humble penny to fuel hours of exploration, reflection, and storytelling, making it a perfect subject for anyone passionate about coins, history, and the legacy of American currency. In the world of American coinage, few coins carry the same level of nostalgic charm and enduring historical significance as the Lincoln wheat cent. The 1952 wheat penny in particular is a coin that connects collectors and historians alike to a period in United States history when the nation was transitioning through the post-World War II era and moving into the heart of the 20th century. This coin is not only a piece of copper, but also a living time capsule that represents the economic conditions, the artistry of American minting, and the evolution of American numismatics. The story of the 1952 wheat penny begins with the Lincoln Cent series, which itself debuted in 1909, when President Theodore Roosevelt had called for A redesign of American coinage in order to elevate the artistry of the nation's circulating money. The sculptor Victor David Brenner was commissioned to create a portrait of President Abraham Lincoln to mark the centennial of Lincoln's birth. His design featured a dignified bust of Lincoln on the obverse, while the reverse displayed two simple yet powerful stalks of wheat that framed the denomination and the inscription 1 cent. The wheat symbolized prosperity, growth, and the agricultural backbone of the United States. The design struck a chord with the American public, and it remained in use for half a century, from 1909 till 1958, making the wheat cent one of the most beloved series in American history. By the year 1952, the United States was deep into the post-war recovery period. The Second World War had ended just 7 years earlier, and the Korean War was underway. The American economy was growing rapidly, suburbanization was spreading, the automobile industry was booming, and consumer culture was expanding. But even in this climate of optimism, there were reminders of the nation's dependence on stability and production. One of those reminders was the small 1 cent coin made primarily of copper, which played an important role in everyday commerce. The 1952 wheat penny was struck at 3 United States mint facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each mint produced millions of these coins, yet subtle differences in strike quality, mint mark placement, and overall finish have made some 1952 wheat pennies far more desirable to collectors than others. Philadelphia Mint produced over 186 million pieces in 1952. None of these carried a mint mark, which was customary for coins struck in Philadelphia. These coins circulated heavily, and many were worn down from decades of use, which means that finding examples today in pristine, uncirculated condition can be challenging, and such coins carry a premium in the collector market. The Denver Mint struck over 746 million pennies in 1952, by far the highest mintage of the year, marked with a small d below the date. The Denver issues are common in circulated grades, but gem-quality examples with strong strikes and vibrant red luster are much scarcer, and they are highly sought after. Finally, the San Francisco Mint produced about 137 million pieces with the S mint mark. Coins from San Francisco in 1952 often exhibit softer strikes and more subdued luster compared to Denver issues, but when found in exceptional condition, they too can command strong collector interest. Collectors value wheat pennies by a combination of factors, including mintage, survival rate, strike quality, eye appeal, and most importantly, grade. When a 1952 wheat penny is preserved in red, uncirculated condition, meaning the original mint luster remains intact, it can be worth many multiples of its face value. Coins graded at the highest levels, such as Ms. 66 or Ms. 67, by professional grading services, are rare and auctioned. Records show that they can bring hundreds of dollars, even though the average worn 1952 penny is still worth only a few cents. This dramatic difference in value reflects the fascination collectors have with coins that bridge everyday circulation and rare numismatic treasure beyond value. The 1952 wheat penny also holds symbolic meaning. At that time, copper was a metal in demand for industrial purposes, and the cent itself was a reminder of wartime changes during World War II. For example, the cent had been temporarily struck in steel in 1943 to conserve copper for the war effort. By 1952, the mint had long since returned to the standard bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. But the memory of those steel cents was fresh in the minds of Americans, making the familiar copper penny feel even more like a return to normal. Scythe artistry of the coin deserves attention as well. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln had been slightly modified over the years, but the 1952 cent retained the classic look of Lincoln facing right with liberty and the date inscribed on the obverse, "And in God we trust," proudly displayed above. The design had endured for decades because of its balance of simplicity and respect. The reverse with the wheat stalks continued to symbolize the nation's agricultural foundation. Even as America was becoming more industrialized and urbanized in the early 1950s, this design served as a connection to the roots of the country, reminding people of the values of hard work and prosperity that defined much of American identity. When studying the 1952 wheat penny, it is also important to place it in the context of the end of the wheat design itself. By 1959, the United States Mint would adopt the Lincoln Memorial reverse as part of the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. This marked the end of the wheat cent era and transformed the Lincoln penny into a coin that bridged two very different halves of the 20th century. Collectors therefore view the 1952 issue as part of the final chapter of the wheat cent series, a last link in a design tradition that had already become iconic. The survival of high-quality 1952 pennies is also influenced by the habits of collectors in that era. By the 1950s, coin collecting had become one of the most popular hobbies in the United States, driven by widespread interest in filling Blue Whitman folders with coins from pocket change. Children and adults alike would save shiny new pennies from banks in circulation, setting them aside in collections that often survived for decades. This means that while many 1952 cents wore down in circulation, a fair number were preserved in original condition, giving today's collectors a chance to own a piece of mid-century America in its untouched form. In conclusion, the 1952 wheat penny is far more than just a small copper coin. It is a window into the post-war optimism of the United States, a reminder of the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln, a symbol of agricultural prosperity and industrial progress, and a beloved chapter in the story of American numismatics. For collectors, it offers the thrill of the hunt, whether searching for an elusive red gem example or simply appreciating the history behind a worn coin that passed through countless hands. For historians, it offers a tangible connection to a nation in transition, balancing tradition with growth. And for anyone who holds a 1952 wheat penny today, it represents the incredible journey of a small coin that has endured for more than 70 years and continues to inspire fascination. In the year 1951, the humble 1-cent piece known as the wheat penny carried with it more than just the face value of a coin. It carried the story of a nation emerging from the shadows of World War II, entering into a period of prosperity and transition. And this single copper coin minted by the United States Mint represented both continuity with the past and a bridge toward the modern age. The wheat penny, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, had already been in circulation for over 4 decades. By the time the 1951 issue was struck, its familiar obverse design, created by Victor David Brenner, featuring the right-facing bust of Abraham Lincoln, remained unchanged, a powerful reminder of Lincoln's enduring legacy as the savior of the Union and the champion of freedom. The reverse still bore the 2 stylized wheat stalks flanking the words 1 cent and United States of America, a simple agricultural motif reflecting America's agrarian roots and its commitment to feeding not just itself, but the world as wealth. Context of 1951 was essential to understanding the wheat penny of that year. America was in the midst of the Korean War, conflict that tested the nation's resolve. During the early years of the Cold War, industry was booming with factories producing military supplies, automobiles, and consumer goods in unprecedented numbers. The average American family was beginning to embrace the dream of home ownership, suburban living, and modern conveniences, yet at the same time, the penny still represented thrift, frugality, and the idea that every cent counted. For children, it was a treasure; for candy and marbles, for workers, it was change given back at the corner diner. And for collectors, it was an opportunity to hold history in the palm of their hand. The 1951 wheat penny was minted in 3 primary locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each producing coins with its own mint mark or lack thereof. The Philadelphia Mint struck the majority of the coins, as was typical, while Denver and San Francisco produced smaller, but still significant quantities. Each coin carried the distinct mark of its origin, with the D and S mint marks placed just below the date. These distinctions, while minor to the casual spender, held great significance for collectors, as mint marks often influenced rarity, demand, and long-term value. The overall mintage of 1951 wheat pennies was high, with hundreds of millions produced, which meant that in ordinary circulation, the coin was common and easily accessible. but the true story lies in condition preservation and the occasional striking Aurora pristine uncirculated 1951 wheat penny with its sharp details and original red luster represented not just a cent, but a tangible piece of mid-20th century craftsmanship. Collectors sought out coins graded by professional services such as PCGs and NGC, where designations like Ms. 65 or Ms. 67 red indicated a coin of exceptional quality. Such specimens, though born from the same minting process as millions of others, achieved market values far beyond face value, commanding respect and admiration from numismatists across the globe. Errors added further. Intrigue off-center strikes, double dies, and other minting anomalies transformed what might otherwise be a common coin into a rare treasure, commanding premium prices and igniting the passion of those who scoured pocket change for a glimpse of the extraordinary cultural significance of the 1951 wheat penny extended beyond its numismatic value. It was a coin that connected generations. Grandparents who had grown up in the Great Depression and navigated World War II handed these coins to children who would live through the space race, the civil rights movement, and the turbulent 60s. In this way, the wheat penny served as a silent witness to the unfolding of American history, each transaction, each exchange embedding the coin deeper into the fabric of everyday life, and yet at the same time elevating it as a historical artifact. The transition from wheat pennies to the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959 on the horizon, making every wheat penny from the 1950s a relic of a fading era, and the 1951 issue stood at the midpoint between the old world of pre-war America and the modern post-war United States. When studying the details of the 1951 wheat penny, collectors often reflect on the artistry of Brenner's portrait of Lincoln, the sharp lines of the president's coat, the subtle texture of his hair, and the dignity captured in his gaze, all of which communicated respect, stability, and trust. The wheat ears on the reverse, though simple, carried symbolism of growth, fertility, and prosperity, values deeply rooted in the American consciousness. The coin weighed 3.11 grams, composed primarily of copper with a small percentage of tin and zinc. Its metallic composition, a continuation of the pre-wartime standard after the experimental steel cent of 1943 during the war years. Thus, the 1951 issue represented a return to normalcy and stability in the nation's coin. In terms of collectability, the 1951 wheat penny offers both accessibility and challenge for beginners. It is an affordable entry point into the world of numismatics, as circulated examples remain inexpensive and widely available for advanced collectors. The challenge lies in finding high-grade, uncirculated examples with vibrant red coloration free of spots or blemishes. Such coins become exponentially rarer as the grade increases, and their values rise accordingly. In this way, the 1951 wheat penny embodies the very essence of coin collecting, the marriage of history, accessibility, and the thrill of the hunt. As the coin continues to pass from generation to generation, its story only deepens. It becomes not just a monetary instrument, but a classroom in miniature, teaching lessons about history, economics, artistry, and the enduring spirit of the American people. The 1951 wheat penny is more than copper, and design is a witness to a pivotal moment in the 20th century, and it remains an enduring reminder that even the smallest denomination can carry the weight of history. The wheat penny of 1951 was produced in massive numbers, with the Philadelphia Mint striking well over 280 million coins, the Denver Mint contributing about 625 million, and the San Francisco Mint adding around 136 million. When combined, the total mintage surpassed 1 billion coins, making the 1951 issue one of the more plentiful years in the wheat penny series. To the casual observer, this abundance might suggest that the coin carries little collectible value, but the truth is far more nuanced. Rarity in numismatics is not always about total numbers struck, it is about how many survive in pristine condition with full original luster untouched by decades of circulation and environmental damage. And these coins left the presses, they gleamed with a rich reddish copper tone, but copper is notoriously reactive, it darkens over time. turning to brown or developing spots, unless carefully preserved in airtight holders or rolls for collectors today. This means that coins graded red by professional services are vastly scarcer than their brown or red-brown counterparts. The market places a significant premium on these fiery red survivors, especially in higher mint state grades. Examples: graded Ms. 67 red are considered gems of the series, commanding thousands of dollars at auction and representing the pinnacle of preservationers. And varieties further enhance the allure of the 1951 wheat penny. Double die obverses, where the date or lettering shows signs of doubling, can bring strong interest from specialists. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and die cracks are all anomalies that transform an ordinary coin into a prized collectible. Some of these errors escaped unnoticed in the hustle of mid-century minting operations, and now surface in collections and estate finds, igniting excitement whenever they are discovered. In the world of American coinage, there exists a coin that is both simple and powerful. In the story, it tells a coin that circulated in the hands of ordinary people buying bread, milk, and newspapers in the early 1950s, and yet today finds itself admired, studied, and collected with a passion that goes far beyond its humble 1-cent denomination. This coin is the 1952 Lincoln wheat penny, and its story is a window into the history of the United States, the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, the changes of the American mint, and the post-war era that shaped the 20th century. When we look at the 1952 wheat penny, we are not simply looking at a small copper coin. We are staring at a direct link to American resilience, progress, and heritage. The design of the wheat penny goes back to 1909, when the United States celebrated the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. President Theodore Roosevelt wanted to beautify American coinage, and the task fell to sculptor Victor David Brenner, who created the famous profile of Lincoln that remains iconic today. On the obverse or front of the coin, Brenner placed a bust of Abraham Lincoln facing right, a first for American coinage, because never before had a real person been depicted on a circulating US coin. Up until then, the designs had been symbolic, with allegorical figures like liberty, but with Lincoln the mint broke tradition and brought a real American hero into the pockets of citizens across the nation. The reverse featured two simple wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, and the motto Pluribus Unum. This reverse design would give the coin its popular name, the wheat penny, or sometimes the wheat cent. Fast forward to 1952, and the United States was in the midst of great social and political changes. It was a post-World War II society, a country that had emerged as a global superpower while also entering the early years of the Cold War. At home, Americans were buying homes, raising families, and enjoying the fruits of industrial growth. The wheat penny of 1952 circulated widely in this booming economy, becoming part of everyday transactions from candy stores to movie theaters to gas stations and restaurants. Every single 1952 penny carried with it both history and heritage. When we examine the 1952 wheat penny more closely, we notice some important details. The obverse side still carried Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln with the inscriptions "In God We Trust" above liberty on the left, and the date 1952 to the right. Beneath Lincoln's bust on some pennies we find a mint mark just below the date. These mint marks reveal where the coin was struck. Pennies without a mint mark were minted in Philadelphia, coins with the small d were minted in Denver, and those with an S were minted in San Francisco. Each mint played a vital role in producing millions of cents for circulation, but not all mintages were equal. In 1952, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 186 million pennies. The Denver Mint struck over 746 million, being at the highest mintage, and the San Francisco Mint produced about 137 million. Though all are common in worn circulated grades, collectors today still pay close attention to the differences in mint marks' condition and rarity, because these small differences can mean the world in coin values. When talking about 1952 wheat pennies, collectors often discuss condition, because condition is king in numismatics. A well-worn penny may only be worth a few cents above face value, but an uncirculated coin with sharp luster No scratches and strong strike can be worth far more. For instance, a gem mint state red example from 1952D can fetch significantly higher prices at auction, while Philadelphia and San Francisco issues also see strong demand in pristine condition. The value is further enhanced when the coin is certified by grading services like PCGs or NGC, which authenticate the coin's grade and originality. But beyond the technicalities of mint marks and grading, the 1952 wheat penny represents something larger. It represents America in the early 50s, a time of optimism, patriotism, and tradition. The penny was a reminder of Lincoln, a president who embodied unity and sacrifice, and keeping his portrait on the most common coin served as a quiet daily tribute to his legacy, while the wheat stalks on the reverse symbolize prosperity and the agrarian roots of the nation. Collectors today not only seek these coins for their copper beauty, but also because each coin tells a personal story. Imagine a 1952 penny resting in the pocket of a young boy who used it to buy a comic book, or being dropped into a jukebox in a diner filled with the sound of Elvis Presley, or maybe saved in a family jar waiting to be rolled and taken to the bank. Every penny carried these small stories of life and survival, and together, they form a collective picture of American culture in the mid-century. The 1952 wheat penny also holds importance in the broader transition of US coinage. In 1959, the reverse design would change to honor the sesquicentennial of Lincoln's birth, featuring the Lincoln Memorial. Thus, the wheat penny of 1952 is among the last of its kind, representing the final decade of Brenner's classic wheat ears design, which had been beloved for half a century. This makes every wheat penny from the 50s not just another coin, but a symbol of the end of an era for numismatics. The metal content itself is also noteworthy. The 1952 wheat penny was struck in a composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This traditional bronze alloy gave the coin its warm red and brown tones. Collectors admire the way copper ages. Some pennies remain red with their original mint color, while others turn brown over the decades depending on how they were stored. These color variations, red, brown, and brown, are essential in determining grade and value. So the color of a 1952 penny is not just a matter of appearance, it directly influences its place in the numismatic world. While most 1952 wheat pennies are common, there are also varieties and errors that excite collectors. Doubled dies, repunched mint marks off-center, strikes, and clipped planchets have all been reported in 1952 cents, and these varieties can transform a simple penny into a valuable rarity. For example, a repunched mint mark on a 1952D can draw strong interest from collectors who specialize in die varieties and error coins. These little quirks of the minting process are highly prized because they tell us about the mechanics of coin production and add a sense of uniqueness to what was otherwise a mass-produced coinage. As we reflect on the journey of the 1952 wheat penny, we see that its significance extends far beyond its monetary value. It is a piece of American art history and culture. It connects us to Lincoln, to Brenner, to the mint workers who struck it, to the millions of Americans who once carried it in their hands and pockets. It connects us to the farmers who saw wheat as a symbol of growth, to the children who counted pennies to buy candy, to the collectors of today who treasure the coin as a legacy of the past. The hook for collectors and history lovers alike is this: when you hold a 1952 wheat penny, you are not holding just a cent, you are holding a story pressed in copper, a story of America in transition, a story of a president's lasting influence, and a story of how something so small could carry so much meaning across generations. That is why the wheat penny continues to capture the imagination. It is why numismatists can spend hours talking about die varieties, mint marks, condition, census reports, auction records, and more. But it is also why ordinary people can still find joy in discovering one and change. A reminder that history is not always locked away in museums. Sometimes it is jingling in your pocket, waiting to be rediscovered. The 1952 wheat penny is both ordinary and extraordinary. It is a coin that tells the story of America in every sense of the word, and that is why it deserves a place, not only in collections, but also in the broader story of our national heritage. Imagine holding in your hand a small copper coin minted more than 70 years ago, a coin that has silently witnessed the passage of American history from the dawn of the Cold War to the rise of a new consumer age, a coin that may seem ordinary at first glance, but carries with it a story of art, politics, economics, and collecting passion. Welcome to Old Quarters Dollar Value, where today we unlock the hidden history, the rarity, the minting secrets, and the collector value of the 1953 wheat penny, one of the most fascinating coins of mid-20th century America. The story of the 1953 wheat penny begins with its design, a design that had already become iconic in American numismatics. By the middle of the 20th century, the obverse features the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln facing right with the inscriptions "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date 1953 standing proudly on its surface. This design was introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, and by 1953 the Lincoln cent was deeply woven into the daily life of the nation. The wheat reverse, with its simple yet bold stalks of wheat framing the denomination 1 cent, and the words "United States of America," had been a staple of American coinage for over 4 decades, representing strength, unity, and agricultural heritage. By 1953, the United States Mint was producing these coins in 3 major facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each mint contributing to the national supply of pennies, but each producing its own distinct marks and rarities. The Philadelphia Mint produced the 1953 penny with no mint mark. The Denver Mint marked its coins with a small d below the date, and the San Francisco Mint produced the 1953 penny. Collectors today know that while millions upon millions of these coins were struck, not all wheat pennies were created equal. Some carried tiny imperfections, others displayed doubled dies, off-center strikes, or weak strikes, while others were struck with such precision that they became gems of the collecting world. The year 1953 itself adds historical depth to the story. America was living in the post-World War II era. President Dwight D. Eisenhower was leading the country. The Korean War had just ended, the Cold War was intensifying, and the United States economy was booming. This period marked the rise of the American middle class. New suburban neighborhoods sprouted, new cars filled highways, and consumer goods became a symbol of prosperity. While Americans carried change in their pockets, coins like the 1953 wheat penny circulated widely in shops, diners, theaters, and gas stations. Yet few people stopped to consider that decades later, those very coins would become prized pieces of history. From a metallurgical perspective, the 1953 wheat penny was composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This composition had been standard since 1864, with the exception of the wartime steel cents of 1943. Copper was not just a metal for minting, but also an industrial resource, and with the demand for copper rising during and after World War II, pennies remained one of the simplest yet most enduring uses of the material. The warm, reddish-brown tones of freshly struck wheat cents made them instantly recognizable, and over time, they developed natural patinas ranging from chocolate brown to deep red tones that collectors now classify carefully. When grading plays a crucial role in determining the value of a 1953 wheat penny. Circulated examples are often worth only a few cents above face value, but uncirculated examples, particularly those with full red luster, can command significantly higher prices. A 1953D or 1953 South penny in mint state red condition can be worth several dollars to hundreds depending on rarity and grade. While the Philadelphia Mint produced over 256 million coins, the Denver Mint struck more than 700 million, and the San Francisco Mint produced over 180 million. Yet despite these massive numbers, high-grade survivors remain scarce, particularly for collectors seeking coins certified at Ms. 66 or above. Mint errors and varieties add another layer of intrigue to the 1953 wheat penny. Some examples exhibit doubled dies where the lettering or date appears to be struck twice at slightly different angles. Others display repunched mint marks where the D or S was struck more than once into the die by hand, giving rise to subtle variations that today fascinate Era collectors off-center strikes, broad strikes, and clipped planchets are also known among 1953 pennies, and these anomalies often sell for impressive premiums far beyond the value of a normal cointh. End of the wheat penny era was only a few years away. By 1953, the mint had already been discussing design changes to modernize the cent. By 1959, the reverse would be replaced with the Lincoln Memorial design, marking the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This meant that every wheat cent from 1958 backward became part of a closed series frozen in time, and as the decades passed, Americans increasingly recognized these coins not as common change, but as nostalgic artifacts of another age. The wheat penny became the first coin many young collectors sought to complete in albums and folders in the mid-20th century. The collecting hobby exploded in the 1960s, and 1,970 prices for wheat pennies rose. Coin shows flourished, and coin dealers thrived on the demand for these small copper coins. The 1953 wheat penny, though relatively common, played a critical role in this collecting wave as children searched through pocket change to fill their blue Whitman folders with cents from every year and mint mark, while older collectors sought high-grade examples certified by grading services that emerged later today. The 1953 wheat penny remains a gateway coin. It is affordable enough for beginners, yet nuanced enough for specialists who hunt for rare die varieties, color, designations, and pristine gem examples. Auction records show that a flawless red 1953 D or S wheat penny in Ms. 67 condition can sell for hundreds of dollars, while unique varieties may command even more in specialized sales. This combination of accessibility and potential rarity makes it a cornerstone of mid-century numismatics. Cultural story of the wheat penny also deserves attention. In 1953, children still bought candy for a penny. Newspapers could cost only a few cents, and jukeboxes played songs for nickels and dimes. The penny was a working coin, not yet relegated to near uselessness. In fact, the wheat penny represented both the value of money and the pride of a nation still celebrating victory in World War II and entering an age of prosperity. Each 1953 cent circulated through hands that lived in an America of black and white televisions. Elvis Presley on the horizon, and the early days of the civil rights movement. When you hold a 1953 wheat penny, you are not just holding copper, you are holding a miniature time capsule of mid-20th century America. It carries the face of one of the nation's greatest presidents. It carries the artistry of Victor David Brenner, who first designed the coin in 1909, and it carries the silent witness of a society in transformation, from war to peace, from scarcity to abundance, from tradition to modernity. Collectors today treasure the 1953 wheat penny, not because it is rare in absolute numbers, but because it connects us directly to that history. For numismatists, coin historians, and casual collectors alike, the 1953 wheat penny remains an enduring subject of fascination. It invites us to look closer, to study mint marks, luster strikes, and varieties, but also to remember the people and the history behind its creation and circulation. As long as collectors seek meaning in coins, the 1953 wheat penny will continue to shine as a humble yet powerful reminder of the past. In the year 1956, the United States was standing at the crossroads of tradition and transformation. The country was in the midst of the post-World War II boom, time of industrial growth, suburban expansion, and cultural change. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. Elvis Presley was climbing the music charts, and Americans were embracing a new age of technology, automobiles, and optimism. And yet, within the pockets of ordinary citizens jingled small copper coins that carried with them a different kind of story. The 1956 Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that today might seem common, but holds a history rich with symbolism, economic importance, and numismatic fascination. The wheat penny first struck in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, was designed by Victor David Brenner, and it featured on the obverse Lincoln's dignified portrait, the first time in United States history that a real person's face, rather than a symbolic figure, graced a circulating coin. On the reverse, it bore two wheat stalks representing prosperity and agriculture, tying the nation's money directly to the roots of its economic foundation. By 1956, this design had already been in circulation for nearly half a century, and it was a familiar friend to millions of Americans as they went about their daily lives shopping, saving, and spending. The 1956 wheat penny comes at the tail end of the series, which would only last until 1958, before being replaced by the Lincoln Memorial Reverse. This fact alone gives the 1956 issue a special place in coin collecting history, for it belongs to the final chapter of an era that had begun before the First World War and endured through the Great Depression and the Second World War. In 1956, over 1 billion wheat pennies were struck by the United States Mint, with the Philadelphia and Denver mints leading the production. The Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark produced a staggering number of coins, while the Denver Mint marked with a small d also turned out hundreds of millions. The San Francisco Mint had ceased regular cent production a few years earlier, leaving the task to these two great mints. Though the mintages were high and the coins circulated widely, the fascination with the 1956 wheat penny comes from more than just its numbers. It comes from its context, its design, its errors and varieties, and its enduring place in the hearts of collectors. To appreciate the history of this coin, one must imagine the 1950s American landscape in which its circulated. Families were moving into new suburban homes built with the GI Bill. Industries were roaring, highways were expanding, and the cost of living was still within reach of the average household. A penny at that time still carried purchasing power. Children could buy candies or small toys with a few cents. Newspapers and gumballs were still obtainable at that price, and for millions of young Americans, saving pennies and jars was their first introduction to the concept of money and value. The 1956 wheat penny, therefore, was not just a piece of copper. It was a symbol of everyday life, of work and play, of saving and spending, and of the enduring presence of Abraham Lincoln, whose face reminded all who used it of the principles of freedom, union, and equality. Deeper into the coin itself, we see the artistry of Brenner carried through decades. His portrait of Lincoln, inspired by a photograph by Matthew Brady, had become one of the most iconic designs in American coinage. The reverse, with its twin wheat ears, was simple yet deeply meaningful, reminding Americans of their agricultural roots at a time when the nation was rapidly urbanizing and industrializing. By 1956, though, collectors were already beginning to take note that the wheat cent would not last forever. Whispers circulated that a new design might replace it, and so some began to set aside rolls of these coins, preserving them for the future. Little did they know that just 2 years later, in 1958, the change would come, and the wheat reverse would vanish forever, except in the collections of those who treasured them. The varieties of the 1956 penny also play a role in its lasting fascination. There are double die examples, where the lettering or date shows striking doubling caused by errors in the die-making process. There are also variations in strike quality, with some coins displaying sharp details, while others show weaker impressions. Mint state examples, those that were never circulated, can today fetch premiums, especially if they remain in high grades with bright red luster. Collectors use designations such as red, red, brown, and brown to describe the color of the copper surface, and the 1956 issue offers fine examples in all categories. Professional grading services today evaluate these coins with scales ranging from circulated worn examples to mint state gems, and even though it was a common coin in its day, the challenge of finding a perfect untouched specimen adds to its allure. Beyond the technical aspects, the 1956 wheat penny tells us about America itself. It is a relic of the Eisenhower era of booming industry and changing culture of a country that was both looking back with pride and forward with ambition. It is also a reminder of the endurance of the Lincoln cent, itself a design that has lasted longer than any other in United States history. The wheat reverse ended in 1958, but Lincoln's portrait has remained to this very day, making the 1956 issue both a continuation of tradition and a farewell to a beloved design. When we hold or study a 1956 wheat penny, we are touching a piece of history that passed through countless hands, perhaps used in a corner store to buy a soda pop, or dropped into a payphone for a call, perhaps saved by a child in a piggy bank, or carried in the pocket of a factory worker on the assembly line. It is these stories combined with the artistry and the minting process that make this coin a true historical artifact. Collectors today see in the 1956 wheat penny not just copper and design, but a tangible link to a world that was simpler in some ways yet rapidly advancing in others. It is this combination of nostalgia, artistry, and historical significance that gives the coin its enduring value, both financially and sentimentally. And so, when we speak of the 1956 wheat penny, we are not merely discussing a coin. We are recounting the story of America in the mid-20th century, a story of growth, optimism, memory, and change. This is why the coin remains a treasure to collectors and historians alike, and why a simple 1-cent piece minted in the millions can today inspire fascination, discussion, and even passion among those who seek to preserve the past through numismatics. Design of the wheat penny remained unchanged in 1956, still bearing the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, sculpted by Victor David Brenner. Brenner's design had originally been controversial back in 1909 because his initials were boldly placed on the reverse. But by 1956, the controversy was long forgotten, and his Lincoln portrait had become one of the most familiar and beloved images in American coinage. It was the first circulating coin in United States history to bear the image of a real person, and Lincoln was chosen not only for his leadership during the Civil War, but also because he was seen as a unifying figure whose memory was cherished by both North and South. Alakeith. Reverse of the wheat penny with its two stylized wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent and United States of America was equally symbolic. The wheat was chosen to represent agriculture, prosperity, and the backbone of the American economy. It was simple, bold, and unmistakable, and while to many it was just the back of a coin, to historians and collectors, it symbolized an America still tied to its agrarian roots, even as it became increasingly industrial. The 1956 production of wheat cents was immense. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 420 million coins without a mint mark, while the Denver Mint produced more than 1.09 billion coins bearing the small d beneath the date. In total, over 1.5 billion wheat pennies were struck that year, making it one of the highest mintage years of the entire series. The sheer volume meant that these coins were plentiful in circulation, and nearly every pocket and purse across the nation carried them. However, as history teaches us, even in years of high mintage, there are always coins that become prized because of condition, errors, or rarity. In higher grades, minting technology in 1956 had improved considerably compared to earlier decades, but it was still not immune to mistakes. Coins could leave the press with doubled dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, and die cracks. And among 1956 wheat pennies there exist such varieties, though not as famous as the legendary 1955 double die. There are nonetheless examples of double dies with noticeable doubling in the date or lettering. These are rare and highly valued by collectors who seek not only perfect coins, but also the unique mistakes that tell the story of how coins were struck. Of American coinage, few coins carry the same level of nostalgic charm and enduring historical significance as the Lincoln wheat cent. The 1952 wheat penny in particular is a coin that connects collectors and historians alike to a period in United States history when the nation was transitioning through the post-World War II era and moving into the heart of the 20th century. This coin is not only a piece of copper, but also a living time capsule that represents the economic conditions, the artistry of American minting, and the evolution of American numismatics. The story of the 1952 wheat penny begins with the Lincoln Cent series, which itself debuted in 1909 when President Theodore Roosevelt had called for a redesign of American coinage in order to elevate the artistry of the nation's circulating money. The sculptor Victor David Brenner was commissioned to create a portrait of President Abraham Lincoln to mark the centennial of Lincoln's birth. His design featured a dignified bust of Lincoln on the obverse, while the reverse displayed two simple yet powerful stalks of wheat that framed the denomination and the inscription 1 cent. The wheat symbolized prosperity, growth, and the agricultural backbone of the United States. The design struck a chord with the American public, and it remained in use for half a century, from 1909 till 1958, making the wheat cent one of the most beloved series in American history. By the year 1952, the United States was deep into the post-war recovery period. The Second World War had ended just 7 years earlier, and the Korean War was underway. The American economy was growing rapidly, suburbanization was spreading, the automobile industry was booming, and consumer culture was expanding. But even in this climate of optimism, there were reminders of the nation's dependence on stability and production. One of those reminders was the small 1-cent coin made primarily of copper, which played an important role in everyday commerce. The 1952 wheat penny was struck at 3 United States mint facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each mint produced millions of these coins, yet subtle differences in strike quality, mint mark placement, and overall finish have made some 1952 wheat pennies far more desirable to collectors than others. Philadelphia Mint produced over 186 million pieces in 1952. None of these carried a mint mark, which was customary for coins struck in Philadelphia. These coins circulated heavily, and many were worn down from decades of use, which means that finding examples today in pristine, uncirculated condition can be challenging, and such coins carry a premium in the collector market. The Denver Mint struck over 746 million pennies in 1952, by far the highest mintage of the year, marked with a small d below the date. The Denver issues are common in circulated grades, but gem-quality examples with strong strikes and vibrant red luster are much scarcer, and they are highly sought after. Finally, the San Francisco Mint produced about 137 million pieces with the S mint mark. Coins from San Francisco in 1952 often exhibit softer strikes and more subdued luster compared to Denver issues, but when found in exceptional condition, they too can command strong collector interest. Collectors value wheat pennies by a combination of factors, including mintage, survival rate, strike quality, eye appeal, and most importantly, grade. When a 1952 wheat penny is preserved in red, uncirculated condition, meaning the original mint luster remains intact, it can be worth many multiples of its face value. Coins graded at the highest levels, such as Ms. 66 or Ms. 67, by professional grading services, are rare and auctioned. Records show that they can bring hundreds of dollars, even though the average worn 1952 penny is still worth only a few cents. This dramatic difference in value reflects the fascination collectors have with coins that bridge everyday circulation and rare numismatic treasure beyond value. The 1952 wheat penny also holds symbolic meaning. At that time, copper was a metal in demand for industrial purposes, and the cent itself was a reminder of wartime changes during World War II. For example, the cent had been temporarily struck in steel in 1943 to conserve copper for the war effort. By 1952, the mint had long since returned to the standard bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. But the memory of those steel cents was fresh in the minds of Americans, making the familiar copper penny feel even more like a return to normal. Scythe artistry of the coin deserves attention as well. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln had been slightly modified over the years, but the 1952 cent retained the classic look of Lincoln facing right with liberty, and the date inscribed on the obverse, "And in God we trust," proudly displayed above the design, had endured for decades because of its balance of simplicity and respect. The reverse with the wheat stalks continued to symbolize the nation's agricultural foundation, even as America was becoming more industrialized and urbanized. In the early 1950s, this design served as a connection to the roots of the country, reminding people of the values of hard work and prosperity that defined much of American identity. When studying the 1952 wheat penny, it is also important to place it in the context of the end of the wheat design itself. By 1959, the United States Mint would adopt the Lincoln Memorial reverse as part of the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. This marked the end of the wheat cent era and transformed the Lincoln penny into a coin that bridged two very different halves of the 20th century collectors therefore view the 1952 issue as part of the final chapter of the wheat cent series, a last link in a design tradition that had already become iconic. The survival of high-quality 1952 pennies is also influenced by the habits of collectors in that era. By the 1950s, coin collecting had become one of the most popular hobbies in the United States, driven by widespread interest in filling blue Whitman folders with coins from pocket change. Children and adults alike would save shiny new pennies from banks in circulation, setting them aside in collections that often survived for decades. This means that while many 1952 cents wore down in circulation, a fair number were preserved in original condition, giving today's collectors a chance to own a piece of mid-century America in its untouched form. In conclusion, the 1952 wheat penny is far more than just a small copper coin. It is a window into the post-war optimism of the United States, a reminder of the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln, a symbol of agricultural prosperity and industrial progress, and a beloved chapter in the story of American numismatics. For collectors, it offers the thrill of the hunt, whether searching for an elusive red gem example or simply appreciating the history behind a worn coin that passed through countless hands. For historians, it offers a tangible connection to a nation in transition, balancing tradition with growth. And for anyone who holds a 1952 wheat penny today, it represents the incredible journey of a small coin that has endured for more than 70 years and continues to inspire fascination. The story of the 1958 wheat penny is not just the story of a single coin, it is the story of America in the mid-20th century, a nation that had weathered the storm of the Great Depression, fought through the trials of the Second World War, endured the anxious years of the Korean War, and now stood on the brink of unprecedented prosperity and global influence. The coin that we call the 1958 wheat penny belongs to the beloved Lincoln Cent series, a series first issued in 1909 to honor the centennial of the birth of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, who preserved the Union during its greatest crisis and gave the nation a renewed sense of hope, equality, and unity. The choice to place Lincoln on the cent was a groundbreaking moment in American numismatics. For up to that point, no American coin had ever featured a real person, only symbolic figures and allegories. And in 1909, it was Victor David Brenner, the talented engraver, who designed the portrait of Lincoln that we still recognize today. His design has endured with modifications, but the essence of his work remains a proud reminder of leadership and resiliency. The wheat penny, as it came to be known, featured on its reverse two stalks of wheat encircling the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the phrase E pluribus unum, meaning out of many one. Placed above this design carried a sense of agricultural pride and national unity, linking the image of wheat, a staple of American sustenance, with the strength of the people. The wheat reverse was used from 1909 through 1958, making the 1958 issue the very last year that this design would be minted before the dramatic change to the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959, which marked the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Therefore, the 1958 wheat penny represents not only a closing chapter in American coinage history, but also a nostalgic symbol for collectors, marking the end of an era. When we look closely at the year 1958, we must remember what America itself was undergoing. Dwight D. Eisenhower was the president. The Cold War was in full swing. Space exploration was becoming a new frontier. As the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, and the United States responded with urgency to enter the space race, the cultural landscape was shifting. Rock and roll music was influencing the youth. The post-war baby boom generation was growing up, and the American economy was thriving with suburban expansion, new automobiles, and a rising middle class. Against this backdrop, millions of 1958 wheat pennies were struck by the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint, and these coins circulated widely in daily commerce, buying groceries, paying for bus rides, or being tucked away in savings jars by thrifty households. Numislicity. The 1958 wheat penny is significant for several reasons. First, it is the last of its kind, the end of the wheat reverse that had been familiar to Americans for half a century. Second, it was produced in extremely high numbers, with more than 250 million struck at Philadelphia and more than 800 million at Denver, meaning the coin was common in circulation. However, despite the massive mintage, the beauty of numismatics lies in condition, rarity, and error varieties. And this is where the 1958 wheat penny captures the imagination of collectors. One of the most famous varieties is the 1958 double die obverse penny, an extraordinary rarity where the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" and the date 1958 appear strongly doubled. This coin is one of the rarest and most valuable Lincoln cents ever discovered, with only a handful known, and it has sold for astonishing prices at auction, running into the six figures for pristine examples. The single error transforms what was a common penny into a legendary treasure of American coinage. Composition of the 1958 wheat penny, the same as other cents of the period: 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, giving it that classic reddish-brown luster when freshly minted. Over time, these coins toned into shades of brown and red-brown, with uncirculated pieces retaining the fiery red appeal most desired by collectors. Coin grading services like PCGs and NGC have encapsulated thousands of these coins in mint state grades, with top population coins commanding premiums, while circulated examples remain widely available for those who enjoy history in hand. But the importance of the 1958 wheat penny is not only in its physical attributes or numismatic rarity, it is in what it represents: the farewell to a design beloved by generations. The wheat reverse had spanned 2 world wars, the Roaring Twenties, the Great Depression, and the industrial rise of America. Had passed through the hands of factory workers, farmers, soldiers, mothers, fathers, and children. From 1909 through 1958, these pennies bore witness to history itself. The last year of the wheat penny, therefore, stands as a bridge between the early modern United States and the era of post-war dominance and innovation. The introduction of the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959 symbolized a new forward-looking America, honoring Lincoln not just with a portrait, but with a monument to his legacy in Washington. To fully understand the wheat penny of 1958, we must reflect on the broader Lincoln cent series. The early years saw the famous 1909 VD controversy, where the initials of the designer were deemed too prominent and quickly removed, only to be restored later, in a less conspicuous form. The 1914 D issue became one of the great rarities, commanding high prices even in worn condition. The 1922 No D cent, struck in Denver, is another celebrated variety, and the 1955 double die obverse became a famous collectible with bold doubling visible to the naked eye. All these milestones give context to the 1958 double die variety, which now ranks among the elite rarities of the series for collectors today. The 1958 wheat penny serves multiple roles. It is a nostalgic coin that completes sets. It is affordable for beginners seeking circulated examples, and it is aspirational for advanced collectors chasing the elusive double die rarity. It can be found in penny rolls in old savings banks and coin shows across America and in prestigious auctions, commanding the attention of serious numismatists. What makes the coin truly special is how it closes one of the greatest chapters in United States coinage history. The wheat reverse Lincoln cent was not just money, it was a symbol of enduring values. Simplicity, strength, and continuity reminded Americans that their nation was built on hard work and sacrifice, and by 1958 it had become woven into the national memory when it was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design. The public embraced the change, but many still looked back fondly on the wheat years that had adorned their coins for nearly half a century. The 1958 wheat penny is far more than just copper. It is a story of America, its people, its economy, its art, its history, and its evolving identity. It is a coin that marks the end of one era and the dawn of another. It speaks of Lincoln's enduring presence on the smallest denomination, yet carrying the greatest symbolism. It reminds collectors and historians alike that even the humblest penny can carry immense value, not just in dollars, but in meaning and legacy. and when you hold a 1958 wheat penny in your hand, you hold the last heartbeat of a design that shaped American numismatics for 50 years, a closing chapter in copper that forever connects us to our past and to the enduring story of the nation.